They said 4 seconds was enough to brand her a coward. 4 seconds of hesitation replayed on screens until the whole country shook their heads. Now the question hung heavier than any mission. If the world has already judged you guilty, would you still dare to stand up and ask for a second chance? The briefing room turned cold as SEAL Commander Grant leaned back, lips curling. No Apache can survive that fortress. Not against 4 generals in one strike. Laughter flickered through the room, quick and sharp. In the corner, a hand stilled. Amara Whitaker's dark skin glistened with a thin sheen of sweat, but her grip was steady. The small K-73 metronome ticked against her palm, 73 beats per minute, calm, relentless. Her nails trembled once, then locked firm. This time she thought rhythm would rewrite memory. Amara Whitaker's mornings always began in silence. At 31, she had learned that silence was steadier than any alarm clock. She would sit at the small kitchen table of her mother's modest home, the sunlight filtering weakly through blinds, and place the K-73 metronome between them. Its steady tick, 73 beats per minute, was no louder than a whisper, but for Amara, it was the drumline of her life. Her mother, once a choir singer at the neighborhood church, leaned forward with a puzzled smile. Some mornings she remembered the hymn, others she forgot the very melody that had carried her youth. Today was one of the forgetful days. Amara guided her mother's breathing anyway. Inhale for 4 beats, hold for 4, exhale for 5. Her mother followed, eyes closing, lips forming words she could not recall. "Good Mom," Amara said softly. "Just keep the rhythm." It was a fragile ritual, but it tethered them both. For her mother, it offered calm in the fog of memory loss. For Amara, it was discipline and anchor that reminded her she could hold steady when the world tried to shake her apart. The world outside was less forgiving. When Amara reached the base later that morning, the air felt colder than the desert wind whipping over the tarmac. Conversations stopped as she walked by. Men and women she had flown with, eaten with, trained beside, now offered only sidelong glances or a curt nod before turning away. Some did not even bother to hide their whispers. In the ready room, a flat screen played in the corner. Someone had left it on the military news channel. She did not need to look, but her eyes betrayed her. There it was again, the moment that had rewritten her name. The 4-second freeze. The footage rolled for the 1,000th time, an Apache hovering above a rescue site. Flames on the ground, civilians waving frantically. The voiceover narrating with grim authority. Chief Warrant Officer Amara Whitaker, call sign Kestrel, hesitated for 4 seconds before engaging. 4 seconds, too long. The clip ended with an image frozen mid-frame, her eyes wide, jaw tight as if fear itself had gripped the controls. To the world it was proof. Proof that she faltered. Proof that she cost lives. No one played the part after her quick recovery, the maneuver that saved 11 civilians, the family she carried out. That was buried under headlines under the cruel chorus of coward. A sergeant shuffled past her now and muttered under his breath, "Better not freeze this time." Amara kept her chin level. Silence was steadier than any rebuttal. Back in her quarters, she checked the small box on her desk. Inside lay an envelope creased and thin. She had opened it a dozen times, though the words carved her deeper with each reading. "We don't want money from a coward." It was a check she had sent to the family of a fallen soldier from the rescue. $50 not meant as repayment, just a gesture. They had sent it back with those words scrawled across the envelope. She stared at it, her breath caught somewhere between anger and sorrow. The metronome ticked beside her, unbothered by shame or memory. She slid the check underneath it, as if to pin her pain beneath rhythm itself. This time she whispered, "Keep rhythm, keep people alive." The words were not loud. They did not need to be. They were her vow. Outside, life went on as though she were invisible. Pilots joked about missions, maintenance crews swapped stories, and Amara moved among them like a ghost with weight still on her shoulders. Yet inside that silence, inside that steady 73 beats, she carried something heavier than judgment, the need for redemption. Because the world remembered 4 seconds of hesitation, Amara remembered the 11 lives saved, and she knew the next chance, if it came, would not be measured in seconds. It would be measured in rhythm. The planning room was thick with cigarette smoke and skepticism. Maps stretched across the digital table lines of red and blue crawling over the terrain of Widowsvale Valley, a place soldiers whispered about as if it were cursed. On the screen, satellite imagery zoomed in on the Triad compound, a fortress carved into rock. "This is our window," the intelligence officer said grimly. 4 hours. 4 generals. All in the same location for the first time in years. His finger tapped the screen. Miss it, and they scatter again. "We may never see them together." A low murmur passed through the officers. 4 generals, each responsible for networks of blood and chaos. Take them out, and hundreds of lives might be spared. But the murmurs turned quickly to headshakes. "No helicopters can penetrate this valley," SEAL Commander Grant declared. "Air defenses are layered, shoulder-fired missiles, radar blind zones, overlapping fields of fire. Even if you make it in, you won't make it out." He let the words hang. "No Apache can survive that." It was the same phrase he had spoken before. A death sentence disguised as military logic. Around the table, heads nodded in agreement. The operation would fall back to ground assault, bloody, costly, nearly suicidal. But no one questioned it. No one until a quiet scrape of chair legs cut through the hum. From the back of the room, Amara rose. No dramatic announcement, no rehearsed speech. Just the deliberate movement of a woman carrying both shame and resolve. She walked forward, every eye drawn not by her presence but by the object she placed on the table. A small worn metronome. Its pulse steady at 73 beats per minute. K73. The officers looked at it in confusion, but Amara didn't explain. She didn't need to. The rhythm was explanation enough. "I'll fly it," she said simply. Grant's laugh was sharp, hollow. "Whitaker, you froze for 4 seconds last time. 4 seconds too long. If you freeze again even once, no one walks out alive." She met his eyes unflinching. The room quieted. The ticking seemed louder, steady, relentless. This time, she said, voice calm as a prayer, "I'll keep the rhythm." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Some shook their heads, others smirked. But the silence had shifted. There was a sliver of possibility cut open by a woman they had already buried in their judgment. The mission had found its volunteer. The silence after Amara's words didn't feel like respect. It felt like judgment holding its breath. Colonel Raymond Mercer leaned forward, fingers, steepled eyes heavy with doubt. He was not a cruel man, but he was a cautious one, and caution could cut as sharply as contempt. "Chief Whitaker," he said slowly, "do you understand what you're proposing? This isn't about skill alone. The risk factors are overwhelming." Beside him, Major Lyle Carver tapped a tablet and projected a matrix onto the wall. Rows and columns glowed red. Altitude stress red, enemy radar red, SAM density red, escape probability red. Carver's tone was clinical, but his smirk betrayed satisfaction. "As you can see, sir, every parameter reads failure. There's no margin here. Any pilot attempting this isn't brave. They're reckless." Commander Grant folded his arms, his grin thin as a blade. "And let's not forget, Colonel, we're talking about the same pilot who froze for 4 seconds. 4 seconds too long. Don't turn a 4 seconds into 40. A ripple of low chuckles moved through the room, cruel and quiet. Amara stood there, face impassive, but her nails pressed so hard into her palm, she could feel the crescent marks forming. Mercer exhaled. "I cannot authorize this unless I have absolute confidence." He slid a clipboard forward the withdrawal form. A pen rolled across the table, stopping just shy of her hand. "Sign this, Chief. No shame in recognizing limits." For a heartbeat, she considered it. Her mind whispered, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm only prolonging humiliation." The weight of the room pressed down the memory of headlines screaming, "Coward," surged back. Her fingers hovered over the pen. Then her phone buzzed. One message. From Mr. Robert Hayes, her 72-year-old neighbor, a retired Vietnam veteran who still saluted the flag every morning before watering his roses. She opened it and her eyes blurred. "Watched your clip 100 times. My wife says that girl saved 11 souls. Don't let anyone tell you different." Amara's chest tightened, not with shame this time, but with something sturdier, something warm. For years, the world had replayed 4 seconds of silence, but here was someone who remembered the minutes that mattered. She put the pen down. Her voice was low, but it carried across the room. "I don't ask for forgiveness. I ask for one chance to keep rhythm long enough." Mercer's brow furrowed, weighing duty against possibility. Finally, he nodded once sharply as if cutting a cord. One chance only. The K-73 metronome ticked in her pocket, steady as a heartbeat. The hangar lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting long shadows across the Apache crouched in its bay like a predator in chains. Amara stood by the landing gear, the echo of Mercer's words still heavy in her ears. One chance only. Funny thing about chances, a voice said behind her. Deep, steady, carrying the weight of long service. Ghostline Reeves stepped into view, his flight suit creased and scuffed from a dozen campaigns. He had been her gunner years ago, and even now his presence was a reminder that not all bonds frayed under pressure. He leaned against the side of the chopper, folding his arms. I was there that day, the day the media made you their headline. They called it a freeze, but I know what I saw. I saw you lift 3 kids out before you fired a single shot. I saw you put people above glory. That's not cowardice. That's courage. Amara met his gaze, the words burrowing past layers of scar tissue. Ghostline's tone wasn't soft. It was the kind of matter-of-fact certainty only soldiers who'd survived together could share. Before she could reply, another figure appeared from beneath the fuselage. Nora Hale, the crew chief, hands streaked with grease and eyes sharper than any officer's. She wiped her palms on a rag, studied Amara for a beat, and then spoke with blunt precision. Command voices can be spoofed, Nora said. You know that, right? They can make a recording sound like Mercer or anyone else. Slip it in mid-transmission and you're flying blind. Amara frowned. So how do I know what's real? Nora pulled a small device from her pocket, the K-73 metronome. Only now it had been modified. She set it into Amara's hand, its surface warm from her touch. I wired it. Real orders will trigger 2 quick vibrations. Fake ones stay silent. If it doesn't pulse, you ignore it. Amara turned the device over, feeling the etched ridges under her thumb. Then she noticed the fresh marks on the back. Nora had engraved words into the metal plate. Keep 73. Hold the line. For a moment, the noise of the hangar faded. Amara pressed the metronome once. It answered with twin pulses, gentle but firm drumming against her palm like a heartbeat. The sensation spread through her chest, steadying her breath, grounding her resolve. Why help me? Amara asked quietly. Nora gave a short laugh. Because we're not here to feed the headlines. We're here to bring each other home. You're the only pilot crazy enough and steady enough to try this. So we make sure you don't do it alone. Ghostline nodded. We keep you alive. You keep the rhythm. That's the deal. The ticking continued in her hand. For the first time in years, Amara felt less like a ghost walking through judgment and more like a soldier among allies. She pressed the K-73 again. 2 quick pulses answered, and her heartbeat matched them, steady and sure. The desert air shimmered with heat as the Apache's engines roared to life, rotor blades, carving the sky into whirling fragments. Sand lifted in sheets around the pads, stinging Amara's faceplate, coating her gloves. From the ground, the world still looked survivable, but she knew that once airborne, every ridge and valley became both shield and snare. She felt the K-73 in her flight vest, a steady vibration against her ribs. Tick, tick, tick. 73 beats per minute, calm as a choir rhythm. She whispered the pattern to herself, more prayer than procedure. Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 5. The helicopter lifted nose, dipping low, as Amara guided it just above the desert scrub. She could feel every downdraft pressing against her palms, every tremor of resistance in the cyclic. The machine was no longer separate from her body. It was her breath, her heartbeat, her silence. Ghostline sat beside her, eyes fixed on the instrument panel. Steady, Kestrel. You've got this. His voice was calm, but Amara knew he was watching her hands, waiting for the smallest tremor, waiting to see if the past would return. Her shoulders loosened as she forced her body into rhythm with the machine. Palms warmed against the controls, eyes widened to the world outside. She caught every shift in the light, every shadow that betrayed a change in terrain. The rotor's thrum melded with the tick of the K-73, each vibration like a guiding pulse. Ahead, the desert ended in a jagged horizon. Widow's Vale loomed, walls of stone that twisted into the sky, narrowing into a throat of shadow. Heat haze blurred the entrance, and within it, unseen currents clawed at the air. Pilots had called it a death funnel. Even drones struggled here, buffeted by sudden gusts and false echoes. Amara's jaw tightened, but her breathing held true. 4 in, 4 held, 5 out. The rhythm did not waver. She thought of her mother's soft voice on mornings when the hymn returned, the way she tapped her hand to the K-73 like a metronome of memory. She carried that now, a song steady enough to outlast fear. The Apache tilted forward, engines straining, and they crossed the invisible line where desert floor gave way to canyon stone. At once the world changed. The air turned violent, rushing in unseen hands that slapped at the rotors, pushing the aircraft first left, then right. Sound amplified, the rotor no longer thumped. It howled, echoing through stone corridors like a giant drum. Wind screamed in the narrow walls. Widow's Veil opened its mouth and the Apache entered the tunnel of judgment. The canyon wind rose into a howl so deep and endless, it felt like the earth itself was warning them away. The canyon narrowed into jagged teeth, the walls closing in, until the Apache felt less like a war machine and more like a trapped bird. The air shifted without warning, downdrafts hammering the rotors, updrafts clawing at the tail. Widow's Veil was alive, and it did not welcome intruders. Amara's breathing stayed measured. Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 5. The K-73 ticked against her chest, a reminder that rhythm was stronger than chaos. Yet she knew this was only the beginning. Widow's Veil carried more than stone, and wind, it carried ghosts. They came upon the first marker, a massive outcropping, split by erosion into the shape of an hourglass. Pilots who had attempted the route before called it 4-second bluff. The name alone was poison. Her hands stiffened, and for 1/10 of a second, the controls trembled. That old headline roared back, 4 seconds too long. She saw again the frozen frame of her own face plastered on every screen. Ghostline's voice cut through, quiet but firm. Keep rhythm, Kestrel, just keep rhythm. Her jaw clenched, but she pressed the cyclic forward, drawing the Apache through the gap. She whispered to herself, as if speaking directly to the metronome, 4 in, 4 hold, 5 out. The tremor in her hands faded, swallowed by the steady pulse of K-73. The canyon twisted left, then right, as though testing her balance. Dust swirled in cyclones, scratching visibility to nothing. That was when the second trial arrived. Her headset crackled. A voice clipped and authoritative. "This is Colonel Mercer. Hold position. Wait 5 minutes for recalibration." Ghostline frowned. "What the hell? We don't have 5 minutes." Amara's thumb pressed against the K-73. Silence. No double vibration. Nora's safeguard had spoken. "That's not Mercer." Amara said, eyes narrowing. "It's a spoof." The false order repeated, more insistent this time, almost desperate. "Whitaker, abort." "You are not cleared." She clicked, the channel closed. "If I listen, we're dead. If I keep rhythm, we live." Ghostline gave a sharp nod. Trust sealed with no further words. They pressed deeper into the canyon, the Apache weaving through stone corridors, barely wider than its rotor span. Shadows played tricks on the eye one moment, in opening the next, a solid wall. Then came the third test, more venomous than missiles. A private channel lit up in her headset, familiar voice of another pilot she once trained beside. "Amara, don't do this. You'll only make it worse. You'll be a joke again. Everyone is watching. Don't prove them right." The words hit harder than turbulence. Shame was heavier than gravity. For a breath she faltered, almost, feeling the pen in her hand again, almost hearing the laughter in the briefing room. But then her memory offered a counterweight, her mother's voice, fragile, wavering yet steady as she tapped her hand to the rhythm of a hymn they had practiced so many mornings. 73 beats over and over. Dum, dum. Even when her mother forgot Amara's name, she remembered the rhythm. Amara's lips tightened. "I don't need applause," she said into the empty air. "I need rhythm." She shut the channel down. The metronome pulsed 2 quick beats against her chest, as if agreeing. The canyon grew darker, the walls rising higher. Ahead lay a constriction so narrow it looked like the throat of a beast. 2 cliff faces leaning toward each other until only a slit of sky remained above. The choke point. Ghostline's hand hovered near the weapons console, though there was nothing yet to fire upon. He muttered, "If we're wrong about this, there's no turning back." Amara adjusted her gripped shoulders, settling into calm. The choke point was not just stone, it was judgment itself. Every pilot who entered Widow's Veil dreamed of clearing it. None had. She pressed the K-73 once more. 2 pulses. Her heart matched them, steady and unyielding. "Then we don't turn back," she whispered. The Apache surged forward into the throat of the canyon, where shadows waited like teeth ready to close. Ahead lay the choke point, no room to turn back, no mercy if rhythm failed. The canyon widened, but only enough to reveal a deeper menace. Widow's Vale uncoiled into a basin, its jagged cliffs wrapping around like the ribs of some ancient beast. And there, fused into the very stone, the triad compound revealed itself at last. From above it looked less like a building and more like a scar in the mountain. Walls carved directly into rock, sangled bunkers camouflaged to mimic natural ridges, turrets poking from cracks like thorns. And then, as if to mock the precision of her sensors, plumes of smoke began to rise in carefully placed patterns, a gray veil designed to confuse thermal scans. Ghostline muttered, "They knew we'd come someday. They've prepared for ghosts." The feed on Amara's display lit with heat signatures. Dozens fighters positioned on balconies, shadows moving along trenches. But her eyes locked on 4 larger, brighter points clustered near the center structure. Generals. 4 of them. Yet something was wrong. One of the figures stood in the open courtyard, no cover, no movement, as if waiting for execution. It was too neat. Too easy. "Primary target, 10 o'clock, Ghostline said, already aligning crosshairs. "We've got a shot." Amara shook her head. Her instincts screamed otherwise. "No, that's bait," Ghostline frowned. "Intel said 4 high-value leaders. We're staring at one right now." "Too still," she replied. "Too perfect." Her eyes drifted from the false prize back to the canyon itself. She noticed it, a thin shimmer in the air, like heat escaping from a crack in the earth. A faint stream of wind pressing sideways against her craft. She adjusted slightly, following it. "What are you doing?" Ghostline asked. "There's a shaft below," Amara said, voice flat. "Air's leaking. That means something's breathing down there." She lowered the Apache by degrees, the rotor wash, stirring dust that revealed a disguised intake vent buried against the cliffside. Invisible to scanners, obvious only to someone who lived by rhythm and sensation. As they drifted closer, sensors pinged again. This time the signatures were real movement underground. 4 distinct clusters converging in a reinforced chamber. Ghostline let out a low whistle. "You were right. They're not out there in the open. They're hiding in the belly." Amara's lips tightened. "They want us distracted. They want us to waste fire." But even as truth steadied, her lies tried to claw their way back. In the static of her headset, an echo rose unbidden, the voice of that news anchor years ago. Chief Whitaker froze for 4 seconds, costing lives. 4 seconds too long. The words layered over the present as if the canyon itself replayed her disgrace. Her hands trembled for a breath, the echo dragging her back to that night when the world turned its back. She forced her thumb to press the K-73. Tick, tick, 2 quick pulses. The rhythm drowned the voices, narrowed the world to one truth: the beat did not lie. Amara exhaled slowly, steadying her grip on the cyclic. Then she reached forward and cut every auxiliary channel, every feed, every background radio. The only sound left in her helmet was the rumble of rotors and the gentle tick of the K-73. She whispered more to herself than anyone else. No more ghosts, only rhythm. Below the hidden chamber, lit up with signatures, 4 men gathered over maps, unaware that their fortress was no longer invisible. The air swirled with smoke outside. Defenses bristled with weapons ready for the obvious approaches. But Amara had carved a new path with instinct alone. She lined up her trajectory, each movement smooth and deliberate, as if every muscle were tied to that 73-beat pulse. Ghostline's fingers hovered above the trigger systems, waiting. "Targets locked," he murmured. The canyon's wind howled louder, pushing and pulling, testing her balance. Widow's Vale whispered its curse, and somewhere inside Amara, the old wound whispered too. 4 seconds. "You'll freeze again. You always freeze." She silenced it with a single thought whispered like steel. If it's 4 seconds again, everything ends. The Apache leveled, hovering at the edge of the unseen battlefield, poised to strike. In the stillness before fire, the K-73 ticked louder than the rotors, and Amara's resolve coiled tight. The next beat would decide not only the mission, but whether her name lived in shame or salvation. The canyon walls fell away into a jagged pocket of sky, and suddenly the compound was before them in full ugly detail. Stone and steel fused together, bristling with gun barrels, watchtowers, and smoke screens. From above it looked impregnable. From this angle it looked alive. Amara's hands flexed on the cyclique. The Apache crouched low behind a ridge of rock, hidden for a moment longer. The heat signatures on her screen pulsed 4 generals inside, 3 clustered, 1 moving. Timing was everything. Ghostline's voice was taut but steady. On your word, Kestrel. 2 clear, 3rd obscured. Amara closed her eyes for half a breath. Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 5. The K-73 ticked against her chest like a metronome of defiance. The voices of doubt whispered, 4 seconds. You'll freeze again. She smothered them beneath the rhythm. Pop-up maneuver, she said. She yanked the cyclic, and the Apache surged upward, breaking over the ridgeline like a predator leaping from shadow. For a heartbeat, the entire compound froze, soldiers on the walls, staring at the impossible apparition in their sky. Targets locked, Ghostline snapped. His hands danced across the console. 2 clean, 3rd behind smoke, ready to stagger. Amara steadied her breath, keeping her frame still, though her blood thundered. Ghostline fired 1, then a staggered 2nd, then a 3rd in a rapid sequence that would land almost as 1. The missiles screamed free their contrails, slicing the sky white. A breath later, the first struck an explosion so sharp it lit the valley like lightning. The 2nd followed, tearing through a communications tower, shattering antennas. The 3rd roared into a bunker stone, cracking like bone. 3 beats, 3 drums, but the rhythm faltered. 4th signature, moving, Ghostline barked. One of them's escaping into the bunker system. On the screen, a single bright mark slipped down into the earth, vanishing beneath layers of reinforced concrete. Amara's chest tightened. If even one of them survived, the mission was fractured. A single general slipping away meant the enemy's Hydra would regrow its head. Ghostline cursed. We've lost him. No lock, no heat. Amara closed her eyes for a blink, shutting out panic. She pressed the K-73. Tick, tick. 2 pulses. Rhythm answered, calm and relentless. Listen, she whispered. What the wind? She banked the Apache slightly, angling her ear toward the canyon itself. A faint shift pressed against her craft, an eddy of air flowing from somewhere it shouldn't. She counted slow and precise, 7 beats and 3 out. The current tugged her nose left, then down. A shaft. A hidden vent. There, she said, voice iron. That's where he's running. Ghostline trusted without question. He armed the final missile. Amara adjusted her breathing, perfectly timed to the K-73 inhale. 4, hold, 4, exhale, 5. On your rhythm, Ghostline murmured. Amara exhaled and fired. The missile arced down, sliding into the seam of stone, where the air leaked. For an instant, nothing happened. Then the mountain itself convulsed. The blast rippled through the earth, shaking the Apache, splitting vents open as fire belched upward in roaring columns. The 4th signature vanished. The explosions boomed together, not as chaos, but as cadence. 3 beats above, 1 below. A drum line that shook the canyon like a church organ. Amara whispered, not to Ghostline, not to command, but to herself, not applause, rhythm. For 1 crystalline second she felt it, the silence after the beat, the echo that meant completion. Then reality snapped back. Muzzle flashes erupted across the compound as enemy fighters poured from cover. RPG trails streaked the air tracers, lashing like whips. The sky above the canyon became a net of fire. Contact, they're closing the exit, Ghostline shouted. The radio crackled alive, sharp and commanding. Whitaker, abort now. Retreat through corridor east. Safe extraction. Amara's hand shot to the K-73. Silence. No twin pulse. Her eyes narrowed. A fake. Another voice meant to lead her into a kill box. Ghostline cursed again. They're hurting us, Kestrel. She pressed the K-73 tighter against her chest, letting the stillness steady her. The silence of the device wasn't weakness, it was warning. Ahead, the canyon throat flickered with gunfire. The way back was gone. The sky above, alive with weapons in command, real or false, was telling her to dive into a corridor lined with waiting guns. The K-73 ticked. Not loud, not fast. Just steady. Amara's jaw set. If rhythm saved us once, it'll save us again. The enemy had blocked the exit. The radio called retreat. But in her palm, the K-73 stayed silent, proof that the next choice would decide not just the mission, but their survival. Smoke still hung in the basin, curling up from the shattered bunkers like incense from a ruined altar. Ghostline's display flickered with the confirmation they both needed: 4 signatures gone. 4 generals eliminated. Targets neutralized. Ghostline said, his voice low with awe. All 4. Mission accomplished. For a heartbeat, the words should have carried triumph. Should have lifted her chest, should have erased the scar of her disgrace. But Amara did not smile. She did not unclench her jaw. Because outside the cockpit glass, the canyon's mouth was already alive with muzzle flashes. Fighters had swarmed to the choke point, their weapons trained on the only way out. A curtain of fire sealed the exit, daring her to try. Ghostline studied the scene, then turned to her with a crooked half grin. 1 more verse left. Amara pressed the K-73 against her vest, feeling its steady pulse. She thought of her mother tapping along to that old hymn with trembling fingers. She thought of Robert Hayes, the veteran neighbor, who refused to forget the lives she saved. She thought of every headline that called her a coward. Her voice was steady now, iron wrapped in rhythm. Keep rhythm, keep promise. Ghostline nodded once, understanding without needing explanation. The canyon exit spat tracers like angry sparks, daring them to retreat through the gauntlet. Command's voice buzzed faintly in the headset again, urging the safe corridor, but the K-73 stayed silent. Silence meant death. Silence meant betrayal. Amara shoved the cyclic forward, not toward the canyon throat, but upward toward the light. The Apache clawed into the sky blades, screaming the cockpit, filling with a glare so fierce it blinded them both. For 30 seconds, they would be exposed, silhouetted against the morning sun, every weapon in the valley able to mark them. But Amara's breath held steady. 4 in, 4 held, 5 out. The K-73 pulsed, her heartbeat aligned, and she rose, not into retreat, but into defiance. Instead of diving into the canyon's safe corridor, Amara pointed the Apache straight into the blinding sun, where survival seemed impossible, and where rhythm alone would have to carry them through. The Apache tore upward into the open sky blades, screaming against the thin air. Sunlight blazed through the canopy, flooding Amara's eyes until the world became a white furnace. Sweat rolled into her mouth, salt and metal mixing on her tongue. She blinked hard, but the glare only sharpened the sense that she was flying into fire itself. Below the canyon spat fury. Tracers clawed upward like desperate hands, streams of red and white reaching for her belly. RPG tails arced, then burst too short, detonating against stone. Her breath threatened to hitch, but she forced the pattern. Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 5. She pressed the K-73 hard into her palm, letting the pulse steady her ribs. Ghostline grunted as rounds whizzed past the cockpit. They've got the sky painted Kestrel. They've painted fear. Amara whispered, eyes locked on the sun. Not rhythm. For a second, the Apache shuddered, buffeted by a gust that felt like Widow's veil reaching up for one last grasp. Her shoulders tensed, but she rolled with it, breath still measured. The rotor wash cut the gust in half and the bird climbed higher. Tracer fire lagged behind, now falling short as the Apache broke the range. The sun swallowed them, hiding their silhouette in its brilliance. To those below, they became no more than a shimmer in the glare. Ghostline finally exhaled. We're clear of the canyon guns. I can't believe it. Amara didn't answer. Her jaw stayed tight, her focus still pinned forward. Victory wasn't measured in explosions behind her. It was measured in how steady she could keep her hands when the world still wanted her to fail. The rim of Widow's veil slid beneath them at last. The jagged horizon that had caged them opened into endless blue. For the first time since the mission began, there was space sky wide enough for escape. But Amara knew the guns had only been the first gauntlet. Beyond the stone and smoke waited something colder, the eyes of those who doubted, the mouths ready to twist her name again if she faltered now. She pressed the K-73 one more time. 2 pulses answered, and her heartbeat followed in step. The Apache had broken free above the canyon rim alive. But Amara understood the hardest fight was still ahead. Not against weapons, but against people. Not against fire, but against memory. The base was quieter than Amara expected. Engines still rumbled on distant pads. Radios still chattered. But in the command hall where she landed, silence clung like a veil. Officers and analysts filled the room, their eyes fixed on her as though she had stepped from myth rather than steel. Colonel Mercer stood stiff, jaw set, as reports flickered across the big screen. 4 confirmed eliminations. Mission successful. But the tone was not celebration, it was suspicion. Somewhere in the data, a shadow waited. Chief Whitaker Mercer said, voice grave, "We've uncovered discrepancies." He tapped a display. Weather projections submitted before the mission had been falsified, gust reports, muted canyon winds, understated. Worse, the retreat order she had heard mid-flight had been traced to a local channel, piggybacked onto official comms. Eyes turned toward Major Carver. He sat rigid, sweat shining at his hairline. Amara didn't speak. She didn't need to. The silence of the K-73 had already convicted him. Mercer's voice hardened. Major Carver manipulated the data and fed counterfeit orders. He tried to kill this mission before it began, and very nearly killed 2 of our own with lies. Carver sputtered, sir. I only wanted to prevent recklessness to stop her from dragging us all into another enough." Mercer cut him off like a blade. "You'll answer to tribunal." For the first time since Amara had known him, Mercer turned back to her, not with doubt, but with something nearer to respect. "Chief, I won't defend him, and I won't erase what you've accomplished today." Beside the colonel, Nora Hale stepped forward. Mercer nodded. "Hale, you'll co-lead the independent review. Rebuild our protocols from the ground up. Make sure no voice, real or fake, ever misleads our pilots again." Nora glanced at Amara, the faintest smile tugging her grease-streaked cheek. The words engraved on the device had proven true. "Keep 73. Hold the line." But Amara wasn't finished. She looked across the hall at the staff, the analysts, the officers who had once dismissed her. "Don't erase the 4-second clip," she said, her voice clear, cutting through the stale air. "Leave it. Let every pilot who comes after see it. Keeping rhythm isn't being fearless, it's fearing, but still steady. Those 4 seconds don't shame me. They teach me." For a moment, no one spoke. Then a rustle spread, quiet, at first then firm. Not applause, something heavier. Agreement. Later, outside the hall, as dust spilled gold across the tarmac, an elderly woman approached. Her hands trembled as she reached for Amara. The woman's husband, a veteran, long retired, stood just behind, tears in his weathered eyes. The wife's embrace was fragile but fierce. That day she whispered, voice breaking, "You saved my husband. The world called you coward. We knew better. You gave me more years with him. I'll never forget." Amara closed her eyes, the weight of shame finally breaking loose. She didn't need the headlines. She didn't need absolution. Rhythm had carried her through, and now, through the arms of a stranger, she felt what it had all been for. In the months that followed, Amara's name no longer belonged only to the headlines. It became the foundation of a new program, Keep 73. What began as a metronome pressed against her chest evolved into training for pilots and soldiers. How to breathe when fear tightens the throat. How to verify orders when voices can lie. How to hold steady when chaos demands haste. But the lessons traveled further than the hangar. Community centers began teaching K-73 breathing to veterans with anxiety, to caregivers overwhelmed by long nights, to couples learning to pause before anger flared. 4 beats in 4 beats held 5 beats out, small rhythm, steady miracle. One evening, Amara stood in a small hall in her hometown. Not a base, not a battlefield. Just a circle of folding chairs and neighbors gathered. At her side, her mother hummed softly the hymn she could still recall, even when names slipped away. The group clapped along 73 beats, tapping on knees and palms, weaving strangers into harmony. Her mother leaned close, eyes clouded yet gentle. "What's your name?" Amara smiled, her hand tightening around the metronome. "I'm the rhythm keeper." Later, when asked to sum up what her mission had proven, Amara spoke not like a soldier, but like a teacher. Tactically, she said, always verify your orders. And when the enemy expects you to run, think the opposite. Surprise doesn't belong to stronger weapons, it belongs to steadier minds. She paused, looking at the faces around her. Young pilots, old veterans, mothers, widows. Humanly, it's rhythm before roar, steadiness before applause. We don't win because we're fearless. We win because we're afraid, and still we keep rhythm. The 4-second clip never vanished from the archives. But when people played it now, they saw not a failure, but the start of a song. The 4-second clip never disappeared, but from today, it's only the beginning of her story. Thank you for watching this story. If it moved you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs courage, and comment your thoughts. We'd love to hear your own Keep 73 moments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful heart-led stories that honor resilience, dignity, and the human spirit.